Hello all, my name is Stacia and I like to talk about movies. So today I wanted to talk about the early career of Jamie Lee Curtis, specifically her horror movies that she starred in her early career. Of course, everybody knows she was in the original Halloween movie in 1978. But I wanted to go further in and talk about the other horror movies that she starred in during that time that really got her noticed and her career started. And if you didn't know, Jamie Lee Curtis was born in Hollywood, California on February 22nd, 1958, and she was born to legendary stars Janet Leigh and Tony Curtis. Her first acting credits were guest star spots on popular TV shows at the time. She was on Quincy M.E. in a guest spot, an episode of Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, an episode of Columbo. So she really got her start with little guest stars on popular TV shows back in the late 70s. She also did a guest starring role on Charlie's Angels. She was cast in an actual TV show called Operation Petticoat, where she did 23 episodes of that. But that show was canceled in its first season, which probably is good for her that it was. Then, as everyone knows, in 1978, she goes to star in a small, low-budget horror film by John Carpenter named Halloween. The next horror movie that she did at that time was another John Carpenter horror movie. With the success of Halloween, the studios wanted to capitalize on the Jamie Lee Curtis John Carpenter duo, so they did the movie The Fog together. This movie came out in 1980. She played one of the main characters of Elizabeth, and she actually starred in this with her mother, Janet Leigh. Also, like Halloween, this was co-written by Deborah Hill and John Carpenter. So they're really trying, to get that, to capture that Halloween glory again. So the budget of The Fog was only estimated to be about $1 million, and it made over $23 million at the box office when it was released. So it was also considered quite a hit. A cheaper made movie that made back 100 times its actual budget, and Hollywood loves that. In 1980, Jamie Lee Curtis did one other horror movie, the movie Prom Night, and this time she did not make that movie with John Carpenter. So this is her first movie without John Carpenter at the helm. And this stars her and pre-comedy Leslie Nielsen. This movie had a $1.5 million budget. It made over $15 million, so it did make its money back. So it is that golden age of horror slasher movies that were made cheaply and then made a lot of money back, but not like gangbusters money like Halloween did. And this movie follows the late 70s, early 80s horror movie trope of men stalking teenagers, killing them. And it's not as good as the other two movies, as Halloween or The Fog. It is fun to watch. My favorite part of it is the Jamie Lee Curtis dance scene and the high school prom, where it's one of those very 80s let's show them how it's done, dancing in the circle of the people cheering you on. And it doesn't get much better than that. And she's great. And it's worth a watch just for that scene. Oh, and I'm sorry, I forgot. She did do one other horror movie in 1980. This one is called Terror Train. Again, not with John Carpenter. Again, not as good as Halloween or The Fog. probably because there was no John Carpenter. But this time it is college students being hunted down by a mass killer. So a little bit different. And this one has a little surprise person playing in the movie, somebody who is not known for their acting, but early young David Copperfield plays a magician in this movie. And so that's interesting to see. And his assistant is played by Vanity of Prince fame. So if we go into 1981 there, does she escape the horror movie past at this point? Kind of. The next movie she does, the 1981 horror thriller hybrid Road Games. She stars in this one with Stacy Keach, and it's no longer about stalking high school or college students, but it is about a truck driver with somebody in a green van following him, and the truck driver suspects that he is killing young women along the way, and he goes through this whole like cat and mouse game to try to find out if he's doing it and catch him. This movie is better than Prom Night or Terror Train, but still not as good as Halloween or The Fog. So does Jamie Lee Curtis escape from horror after that movie? Not quite. Although her next movie is a movie where she teams up with John Carpenter again, but it is not one of John Carpenter's horror movies. It is Escape from New York, and she's just a voice in it. So does it really count? I don't think so. The next movie she does is a TV movie called She's in the Army Now, which guess what that's about, and it kind of capitalizes on the success of Private Benjamin. It's not a horror movie. It's not a great movie either. It is kind of a unsuccessful mashup between Stripes and Private Benjamin, and it just doesn't go well. So if you ever find this movie available to watch, which is hard to find, just skip it. You don't need to. The only other notable thing about She's in the Army Now, it does co-star Kathleen Quinlan, who I guess most people know that she is in Apollo 13 playing Jim Lovell's wife, and she co-stars also with Melanie Griffith. So two Hollywood Nepo baby types, early Nepo babies. I don't know. Nepotism has been going on forever and ever in every industry, and if you're talented, I really don't care. But they are both in this movie together, and I believe Melanie Griffith and Jamie Lee Curtis have had a lifelong friendship. I don't know if this is where they met, but they have certainly been friends for decades. So is she out of her horror movie stage? Yes, with starring in that TV movie, and not quite. She then in 1981 stars in the Halloween follow-up, Halloween 2, still written by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, but this time with a totally different director. It is a different feel than the first Halloween movie. It is not quite the phenomenon that was. I don't think John Carpenter likes this movie, but it's there. It's not as good. It's basically, even though it comes out 3 years later, it is a continuation of that night with Jamie Lee Curtis's character in the hospital and Mike Myers still wanting to get her. And that is the whole movie, of her in a hospital and Mike Myers trying to get her. So at this point, is Jamie Lee Curtis out of her horror movie beginnings? Yes, she is. She goes on to star in some B-level projects, but not horror. that help her get noticed. She starred in the TV movie version of Death of a Centerfold about the murder of Dorothy Stratten, the Playboy model. Trading Places is what really got her out of that genre. That came out in 1983, and of course she stars in that with Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy, and she is really the only lead female role in that movie. And she does a very good job. She shows her comedic chops. She gets good notices. And that really breaks her out of being the horror movie girl. Not that there's anything wrong with being that horror movie girl. But then again, this did lead her to getting pigeonholed into that sexy comedic girl in movies. Then I would say around 1988 is when she really, broke out of that even more, being, pigeonholed into those two, like you either had to be the horror movie sexy girl or the horror movie girl next door or the sexy woman sidekick kind of in a comedy movie. And in 1988, she does two movies, one Dominic and Eugene, and the other A Fish Called Wanda. And these two movies are much better movies than what she has been starring in, despite highlights like Trading Spaces or her earlier John Carpenter horror movies. And this really, you can see the trajectory of her career go up from there. In a few years, she'll be starring in True Lies with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and she will take a road back to the horror genre and back to Halloween. And now she is an Oscar-winning legend in her turn in a supporting role in Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. And so we love you, Jamie Lee Curtis. Check out her early horror movies, not just Halloween. Check out The Fog and check out Prom Night just for the dance scene. You can fast forward it. It's a little bit weird seeing Leslie Nielsen in a horror movie. And if you're like me and you're just used to seeing Leslie Nielsen as the guy in the spoof movies, it's just weird to see him in anything else. And then if you're bored and just want to complete the early Jamie Lee Curtis Horror Fest, check out Terror Train, Road Games. And if you're looking to complete your Halloween set, check out Halloween 2. I actually don't think Halloween 2 is as bad as most people make it out to be, but check it out for yourself and tell me what you think. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe, leave a comment. I would love to get more subscribers. I have a whole 25 now, but hey, I love talking about movies, and if you love talking about movies, join me again and drop me a comment and tell me what you love about movies. See you next time. Bye.